This is now is probably one of my favorite songs on this record, and probably one of my favorite songs I've written because it's all about Peter. The very first song I wrote and sang to a group was the song Voice of Truth, and it all starts out with just, God, if I just had the strength and the faith to get up out of this boat and walk on water where you call me. It's always been me and Peter. I've always been the guy that's the quick one to speak, but the slow one to back it up. And that's who he was. And sometimes when you're that person and you fail and you fall before God, you kind of feel like he's got this line, he's going to be done with me after a while. And John chapter 21, when I read this for the first time and lined it up with what's happening in Scripture, man, it blew up for me. Because if you remember, Jesus met Peter at a boat. Peter was fishing because he was a fisherman. That's what they do, all right? So they're out there doing their thing. Jesus steps up and says, hey, are you catching anything? They're like, no, we haven't caught anything. Well, because, if you were to cast your nets on the other side, you'd catch a big load of fish, right? And they got to be thinking, seriously? I mean, this is kind of what we do every day. We don't even know you. But for some reason, Peter goes, all right, we'll do it. And Peter has the biggest payday of his career. Biggest payday of his career. And in the middle of all that, he kneels down in a bunch of fish in what he could almost retire on or start a new business on. And he leaves it all behind and he follows Jesus. And his life is turned upside down. He gets to see miracles. He gets to hear the teachings of Jesus before anyone else. He gets to be a part of things. He sees God, Jesus transfigured on a mountain. Man, just crazy stuff that he sees. But then the heat starts turning up. It starts getting a little less popular to be around Jesus. Suddenly there are these other guys in the back of the room every time Jesus is teaching. Suddenly he starts noticing every time there's a miracle, these people in the funny robes are in the back. What's going on with this? And it gets harder and harder and harder to live around Jesus. They start having to duck away and get in some places and be careful where they go. And suddenly they don't want the kids to be around them. Oh, let's keep the kids away from me. Let's get away. We can't feed all these people. Suddenly they're more cautious. And then Jesus starts talking crazy. He starts saying, man, I'm going to be taken and I'm going to be killed and I'm going to raise again on the third day. And Peter's like, no. This isn't going to happen, man. We're with you. You're our guy. We can't do this. And in the middle of all of that, Jesus is crucified, just like he said. And when Jesus needed Peter the most, Peter bails. He's scared. He doesn't know if he can do this, and he runs. Surely we've done that. I know I have. And in that moment, you're like, man, that was my shot. Well, check this out. In John chapter 21, here's what happens. After Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, he revealed himself in this way. Okay, Jesus has appeared risen to the disciples, and Jesus saw him. Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael of Cana, and the sons of Zebedee, and the other disciples were all together, and Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. When I read that verse, that just jumped out at me. Because that's where I live. I mean, he just saw the resurrected Jesus. Everything is going to be fine. We're going to get through this. Why in the world? Peter hadn't talked about fishing in 3 years. And suddenly he's like, man, I'm out. I'm going fishing. And what's the next verse? They went out. We'll have to cut that. Sorry. I said I'm going fishing. Fun with dyslexia. Can you cut?
Yeah.
Can you edit?
I'll just slice it through.
All right. We're going to stop it at, I'm going fishing. And you remember when I said, that's the coolest thing?
Mm-hmm.
You said
just
that.
Jump back off the page.
All right. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
In an even cooler verse, in an even stranger verse than that, is when the disciples said, we'll go with you. You never fall alone. You always take somebody with you. So here's Peter, and it's as though he's saying, man, I had my shot. I tried, and I didn't do it. There's no way I'm back in. I'm just going to go back to what my old life is. And our churches are full of people just sitting in the chairs going, man, I had my shot to serve God, and I failed. I was supposed to trust God with this, and I didn't. I got to that line, that magic invisible line we can't find in Scripture anywhere, but it's got to be there, and it's too late for me. What does Jesus do with Peter's failure? Just as the day was breaking, verse 4, Jesus stood on the shore, yet the disciples did not know it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, "Children, have you caught any fish?" And they answered, "No." And he said to them, "Cast your nets on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." This is a different story. See, when you jump around Scripture, you can think the miraculous catch of fish happened once. It happened twice. So they cast it, and they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. The disciple whom Jesus loved, therefore, said to Peter, "It's the Lord." And when Simon Peter heard it was the Lord, he was so far away from Jesus now in the way his life is, he can't even recognize Jesus. Some of us have been there too. When Peter heard it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he was stripped for work, and he threw himself in the sea. Peter swims a football field length to get back to Jesus. And what has Jesus done? Jesus has made him breakfast on the beach and has a conversation with him about love that'll just about blow your mind. What was Jesus saying to Peter? Peter, I know you failed me. I remember it all. I was there. But I love you enough that we will start all over if we have to. We will do this all again, because that was then and this is now.